Hi there, I'm going to talk to you about the top 5 things you need to be aware of in relation to discrimination law. The first thing you need to be aware of is why it's actually important to know about discrimination law and be fully up to speed in terms of the legislation and regulation. The first thing is it will allow you as a business to ensure equality of opportunity. It will protect your employees' dignity, and it will also ensure that your staff feel comfortable enough to raise any concerns and complaints without fear or uncertainty. The second thing you need to be aware of is what happens if you breach or fail to comply with the relevant discrimination laws. There are penalties that you need to know. For instance, you may find yourself liable for a very high compensation award in the event a discrimination claim is found to be successful. Don't forget that a tribunal has no limit in what it can award in a successful tribunal discrimination claim. Also associated with discrimination claims are expensive litigation, both in terms of expensive legal costs and also the amount of management time that's spent dealing with such matters. You may also find that any such complaints bring with them negative publicity. This can be both internal and external and affect your staff morale generally. The third thing I'm going to talk about is the areas of working life that are covered and protected by discrimination laws. So for instance, it starts from the very first job advert, the recruitment process, conduct during the working relationship and employment, conduct during any work social events, and also once the employment has terminated, protection extends beyond that for any references that you may provide. We then come to the fourth point: what acts are protected and what types of discrimination is prohibited? Well, for instance, a business must not discriminate against its staff on the grounds of their sex, age, race, disability, if they are pregnant or on maternity leave, because of their relationship status, religion or belief, their gender, and also note there is protection against discrimination in terms of victimisation and harassment also. Lastly, we come to the fifth point. I think that you also need to be aware of the practical steps which you can take to protect your business. So I'm going to take you through some practical tips that may assist you. So for example, I think it's very important to have in place the correct handbooks and procedures to ensure most particularly that you have an equal opportunities policy. This will ensure that all staff in the business are aware of what is acceptable and what is unacceptable behaviour. It will also ensure that the proper procedures are in place to educate staff in terms of how they raise complaints, how they respond to complaints, and how the entire process works. The next thing in terms of practicality is ensuring that your staff receive the proper training. This is particularly important for your managers who may find themselves in positions where they are dealing with any grievance or disciplinary procedures, or in situations where they're interviewing new recruits, so that they are fully up to speed on what types of questions they can and can't ask. It's also important, very important in fact, that you ensure any behaviour that amounts to discrimination is not tolerated at all. Such behaviour should always be dealt with via the correct channels, and most importantly via any disciplinary channels that may be appropriate. The next thing that's the practical tip is ensuring, if you are dealing with disabled employees, that you do make the reasonable adjustments necessary and if appropriate. Always ensure that you understand whether the employee is actually disabled. Ensure that you've made the correct investigations and that you understand what their disability is, what reasonable adjustments may be required, and what your obligations are as an employer under the Equality Act. If you are in doubt and you are uncertain, always seek legal advice. That's the most important thing. Lastly, I think it's also important to ensure that any flexible working requests are dealt with reasonably and in line with the correct procedures. Try and allow as much family-friendly working hours as possible, of course, if your business allows, unless there are, of course, business justifications not to. Thank you.